Discovering your husband is cheating, it's such a small thing. At a dinner with friends, the man who always carried himself with pride suddenly started serving dishes to everyone at the table. Later, I overheard him murmuring a line from Roman Holiday in his study. To shake your hand. I shook hands with everyone else first. TCH. Chapter 1. Joel and I both came from a tiny, unknown town. Typical small-town test-takers. We survived hellish studying, aced the college entrance exam, got our bachelor's from a 211 university and master's from a 985. After graduation, we both secured civil service jobs. Starting from the bottom, one step at a time, we slowly rooted ourselves in the provincial capital where we had no connections. Now, we're both department heads, with respectable social status, a house, a car, and enough housing fund to cover the mortgage. In short, we achieved mainstream success the most traditional, fair, and unprivileged way possible, the classic Chinese route to class mobility. This year, we had two major pieces of good news. First, Joel was promoted to a leadership role at a state-owned enterprise at the beginning of the year, with his salary multiplying several times. Second, I got pregnant. Yes, 6 years into our marriage, and I was finally pregnant. Joel is the only son of 3 generations. He has a hereditary condition, oligospermia. After turning 30, his chances of fathering a child were basically zero. Our journey to conceive wasn't any easier than building our careers. But 2 months ago, in the spring of Joel's 3rd decade, I finally got pregnant. When I handed him the report, Joel, usually so reserved, hugged me tightly and wept like a child. Chapter 2. Over the years, we built a small circle of friends in the city, and we occasionally gathered for meals. Today was one of those gatherings. As soon as we were seated, everyone showered Joel with praise. Young, accomplished, surely about to be promoted to deputy director. Joel just smiled modestly. In the office, he was known as the pen, a talent with words, always valued by higher-ups, and carried himself with a bit of aloof pride. Oliver and his wife are coming too, someone said. Everyone's faces suddenly shifted. Oliver was a fellow townsman of Joel's. He had made a fortune as a contractor a few years ago, but picked up a gambling addiction and lost everything. Now he was blacklisted for debt. Every time he showed up at gatherings, he got drunk, ranted about the world's unfairness, and last time even hospitalized an old friend in a drunken fight. I invited him, Joel said, putting down his teacup calmly. He's an old friend. Just because he's down doesn't mean he's no longer our friend. Since he said that, no one argued. They just laughed awkwardly and nodded. I frowned slightly, not because of the invitation, but because I was pregnant, and Oliver chain-smoked like crazy. If you asked him to stop, he'd sneer and call you judgmental. I turned to speak with Joel, but saw him glancing at the door, clearly expecting someone. Bang! The door slammed open. I jumped. Oliver came in cursing. Charged me 20 for parking. The hell? Might as well rob me. He pointed behind him and shouted. Every other woman sides with her man. But you're just a traitor. Behind him was his wife, Zoe, head down, her face faintly marked with fingerprints. She had always been gentle and sweet, but clearly unlucky to be married to a brute like Oliver. Watch your mouth. Joel snapped suddenly. His tone was sharp. Oliver instantly changed his expression, grinning sheepishly. Bro, sorry. I've got a bad temper. Didn't watch my mouth again. I'll down 3 drinks later, okay? He plopped down and grabbed peanuts with his chopsticks, completely ignoring his wife behind him. Zoe stood awkwardly at the door. She quietly pulled some hair forward, clearly trying to hide her face. Everyone looked away out of pity, trying to spare her embarrassment. I sighed and raised my voice. Zoe, come join us. The food's coming. She smiled at me gratefully and sat beside Oliver. Thank you, sis. Then she looked past me toward Joel and whispered, thank you, bro. Joel's subtle change. Joel's expression tensed slightly, but he said nothing. During the meal, Oliver kept cursing loudly, puffing smoke and chugging alcohol. Soon, his face was as red as a cooked shrimp. Zoe kept peeling shrimp for him, pouring him drinks. She barely ate anything herself. I was just about to urge her to eat more, when Joel suddenly reached out with his chopsticks and served a piece of fish to Leonardo, who was hosting the dinner. Leonardo chuckled. I'm the host today, I should be the one serving you. It's all the same, Joel replied calmly. Then he stood up and served a prawn to the next person at the table. Just like that, he moved along the seating order, giving each person a bite of food or a bowl of soup. Everyone was visibly flattered and surprised. Wow, what's up with Joel today? The sun must have risen in the west. Seriously, we're not used to this at all. Must be because his wife is pregnant. Joel must be thrilled. Exactly. No wonder. I was a little surprised too, but hearing everyone say this, it started to make sense. Joel had always been introverted and not great at expressing himself. My pregnancy was huge news, not just for him, but for his entire family. His parents back in our hometown were even more excited than when he passed the civil service exam. Smiling, I was about to tease him a little, but then I saw him slightly lift his gaze, casually glancing toward the seat diagonally across from him. I followed his line of sight. Zoe was sipping soup slowly, her head lowered, behind her fallen strands of hair. Her almond-shaped eyes were slightly red. That bowl of chicken soup, Joel had served it to her. Chapter 3. I work in human resources. When it comes to observing people and relationships, I'm sharper and more experienced than most. So I could tell immediately. Joel's uncharacteristic behavior today was all for the sake of serving that bowl of soup to Zoe. Why would Joel suddenly care so much about Zoe? I couldn't help but think back to 2 months ago. Oliver's father passed away. Joel, as a fellow hometown friend, accompanied him to the funeral, and also visited his own parents along the way. He was gone for 5 days, traveling with Oliver and Zoe both ways. Did something happen during that trip? Because of my job, I've learned to hold back on making hasty conclusions. To be fair, Joel had always treated me well. We met by the artificial lake at our university. He was the first one to arrive for morning reading. I was the second. We were incredibly alike, both from small towns, poor backgrounds. We were each the pride of 3 generations, shouldering the family's hopes and sacrifices. Over the years, all the pressure and expectations were focused on us. We kept running forward, never daring to slack off. When I met him, I felt like I had finally found someone walking the same path, like I wasn't alone in that dark, suffocating ocean. And I think I meant the same to him too. That night, I said nothing about what happened at the dinner table. When we got home, he held me tightly, his desire intense. Miranda, can't we? Not yet. We're not past the first trimester. Just wait a bit longer. He exhaled heavily, got out of bed and said with frustration, I'll go take a cold shower. I was half asleep when he woke me again. He looked tense. Oliver's drunk again. He's smashing things at home. I'm going over to check. Who called you? I asked. His wife, on the phone. Both she and the child were crying. Sounds pretty serious. I checked the time. It was past 11. It's too late. Don't go. If it's that bad, she should call the police. Besides, it's their family business. You're not even related. Miranda. Joel suddenly snapped. I froze. He looked at me with impatience and a touch of contempt I didn't recognize. When did you become so selfish? Just because your life's good now, you want to watch someone else suffer? You know Zoe's personality. She wouldn't have asked me unless it was a last resort. Miranda, saying something so cold to a friend, don't you feel ashamed? I stared at him, stunned. He felt like a stranger. I hadn't fought with anyone in a long time. Not with colleagues. Not with family. Not with Joel. Long ago, I realized that arguing solves nothing. It only turns communication into a battle of emotions. Even if you argue, it should be a tool, not the goal. Anger hurts, and it always hurts yourself most. I closed my eyes and asked calmly, I've worked hard for everything I have now. Why should I feel ashamed for someone else's misfortune? Joel stood by the bed, glaring down at me. Well, I'm going anyway. I don't know what time he came back that night. When I left for work in the morning, his shoes were still at the door. The guest room door was shut tight. That day, I had an important organizational review meeting. I couldn't let him ruin my focus. Chapter 4. The small argument passed by that night. When I came home from work, A steaming meal was already laid out on the table, with a plate of cut fruit and a birthday cake. He walked out with a bowl of soup, smiling casually. Perfect timing. Go wash your hands. Dinner's ready. I made your favorite, braised fish. I lowered my eyes, slowly placed my bag on the cabinet by the door, then looked up and smiled as well. Happy birthday. He laughed. 31 now, an old man already. During dinner, he mentioned offhandedly. Last night, I scolded Oliver a bit and came back. Didn't want to wake you, so I slept in the guest room. I nodded without saying a word. After the meal, as I got up, something occurred to me. I turned to him and said, I haven't been sleeping well lately. Why don't you sleep in the guest room for a while? He froze for a second. Okay. After that, life between Joel and me returned to a seemingly peaceful routine. I was busy handling interviews and onboarding at my department, while he was working on launching a new project at his company. It was as if nothing had ever happened. We're both people who prioritize logic over emotion. Everything we do is weighed in terms of pros and cons. I thought, maybe this is the benefit of marrying someone rational. But soon, I realized I was wrong. Chapter 5. My younger brother Oscar called me out of the blue. He's 6 years younger than me, just finished his master's, and is currently job hunting. He rambled on about a bunch of irrelevant things before finally asking, Sis, how are you and Joel doing lately? I found it odd. Just say what you want to say. He hesitated a bit, and finally explained, and the anger in my chest began to grow. Oscar majored in materials engineering. In recent years, nearly all graduates in that major who planned to stay in the city had been hired by the company Joel currently manages. But Oscar said he was eliminated during the interview process. The reason? The upper-level leadership didn't approve. Sis, out of the 8 of us who wanted to stay here, I'm the only one who got rejected, so I'm wondering if maybe Joel had something to do with it. After hanging up, I composed myself and immediately called Joel. He didn't answer. 10 minutes later, he called me back. What part of Oscar's application didn't meet your company's standards? I asked directly. He was silent for 2 seconds, then replied gently, Miranda, there was nothing wrong with his application. Then why was he rejected? Well, here's the situation. The leadership team decided to prioritize someone with work experience this round, so 1 slot was cut. Considering everything, I took the initiative to remove Oscar's name. I'm new in this position. If I bring in my own brother-in-law as soon as I take charge, people will say I'm playing favorites. Miranda, I hope you understand. I don't understand. I cut him off. Oscar chose this major long before you were even transferred. Even if you weren't the one in charge, he would have been a guaranteed hire. This has nothing to do with favoritism, and you're telling me the leadership team wanted someone with more experience, which reduced 1 slot, but you're the deputy director. Didn't that suggestion come from you? Joel was silent for a few seconds, and then his tone turned cold. Miranda, you work in HR too. I didn't expect you to be this immature at such a crucial moment. Anyway, the decision's made. You throwing a tantrum won't change anything. He hung up. I bent over, clutching my belly as a sharp pain stabbed through me. When Oscar got into college, his goal had always been to work for this major state-owned enterprise. And now, because of his brother-in-law, because of me, he lost his chance. Instead of helping him reach his goal, I held him back. I felt miserable. Chapter 6. Joel and I started giving each other the cold shoulder. But this time, his attitude was unusually firm. He didn't seem to care about my pregnancy or my emotions, showing no sign of backing down or softening. Ironically, it was Oscar who comforted me. Sis, don't blame him. He's new at the company, probably facing some pressure. I'm still young. Getting experience somewhere else isn't a bad thing. 2 days later, while dining out with colleagues, I unexpectedly ran into Zoe. She was eating with a group of men and women, chatting in our hometown dialect, probably a hometown gathering. When she saw me, she smiled and walked over with a man. Sister-in-law. What a coincidence. I smiled and nodded. Yeah, what a coincidence. The man beside her beamed at me. My aunt told me you're Joel's wife. I just had to come greet you. I work under him. I politely asked. Nice to meet you. Which department are you in? He smiled and said, I'm part of the new hires, still an intern. I owe it all to Joel. Normally, the company doesn't recruit non-fresh grads. But thanks to my aunt asking for a favor, he made an exception. I wouldn't have had a chance otherwise. I lowered my gaze and didn't speak for a long while. Zoe added softly, "One of these days, Oliver and I will invite you and Joel to dinner. Just the four of us. Would that be okay? Sister-in-law?" The soup bowl on the table had formed a greasy white film, sickening and unappetizing. I slowly lifted my eyes and gave a slight laugh. Sure. Chapter 7. At 10 in the evening, Joel came in while I was leaning against the bed reading. The party office at work had organized a reading circle, and I had chosen selected works of Mao Zedong. He reached out and handed me a stack of cash. "Oscar just graduated and needs to rent a place. Here's $5,000, consider it a little help from me as his brother-in-law." I glanced at the money in his hand. "No need." Joel frowned, hesitated for a few seconds, then spoke in a somewhat restrained tone. "Miranda, surely you're not still hung up on the interview thing? I might have a bit of power now, but exactly because of that, I'm walking on thin ice. Can't you try to understand me?" I closed the book. What I meant by no need is that Oscar doesn't have to rent. He bought an apartment. Joel froze, visibly surprised. He bought one? Where did Oscar get the money? Your parents only have their meager pensions. Didn't you tell me they've been waiting for him to start working? I looked up and stared at him silently. When he met my gaze, he seemed to realize something. His expression shifted a little, and he cleared his throat before continuing. "He's a master's graduate. Even if he didn't get into our company, he'll still find a job somewhere." Sigh. "Miranda, we're married, we're the closest people in the world, and you're pregnant. Let's not keep fighting over this. Just take the money and give it to him." How could he possibly afford a house? He couldn't. That's why I lent him $300,000. With housing prices dropping, it was just enough for a down payment on a second-hand apartment. I explained calmly. "What did you say?" Joel looked at me in disbelief. "You gave him $300,000? Miranda, how could you make such a big decision and only tell me now?" I leaned back against the bed and tilted my head toward him. "Joel, are you that tired from work that you can't even hear clearly?" I said lent, not gave. And this isn't any different from when you gave your sister $300,000 for a house after her divorce and only told me afterward. His face darkened. "That's not the same." "How is it not the same? My sister had nowhere to go after the divorce. Besides, I consulted you later and you agreed. Oscar just graduated. It's not like he urgently needs to buy a house." I nodded slowly. Yes, if Oscar had gotten the job, he'd be living in the company dorms, and there'd be no rush to buy anything. But now that he was rejected and has nowhere to live, he simply moved the plan forward. And as for making decisions on my own, well, aren't I asking for your opinion now? Joel stood there, mouth slightly open, at a loss for words. "Joel, if I can understand your sister's situation, can't you understand my brother's? Or do you think I don't have the right to make such decisions in this household?" I looked at him quietly. 3 years of dating, 6 years of marriage. I knew him well. His natural temperament would always cause him to blurt out raw emotions when caught off guard. But his learned composure would quickly take over, allowing him to regain control and make rational decisions. The money was given, the matter was done. And there was a reason, one that started with him, and I simply followed through. Fair enough. The room was silent. Joel stood at the foot of the bed, his expression shifting several times before settling, even forming a gentle, tolerant smile. "Of course, Miranda, this is your home too. You absolutely have the right to decide. Oscar is your brother, not a stranger. It's only right to help him with something as important as housing." I smiled softly. "All right, I'm tired. Going to sleep now. You should rest too." He left quietly, but turned back at the door. "There's one more thing. Oliver and his wife want to invite us to dinner. If you don't want to go, I can go alone." "I'll go." Chapter 8. Oliver had invited us to a private dinner at home. When Joel and I arrived, he was standing on the balcony, back turned, speaking meekly on a debt collection call. It was his 9-year-old son, Lucas, who opened the door. He didn't greet us, just walked back into the room with his phone, a cold expression on his face. Oliver turned around, saw us, and rushed over to welcome us. He was muttering curses at Zoe, who had just come out of the kitchen with hot soup in her hands. He scolded her harshly. How could she be so blind as to not notice the guests had arrived? Zoe flinched from his words, the boiling soup splashing onto her hand. A large patch turned red instantly. Joel set the gift bag down hard on the table and barked. All right, enough. I came here for dinner, not to watch you berate your wife. Zoe bit her lip and forced a smile. It's nothing. He's just in a bad mood. Letting him blow off steam won't kill me. Joel glanced at her hand, his expression growing darker. I was a bit confused. Why was he so focused on her hand? Zoe was a hardworking, capable woman. She moved quickly and efficiently around the house, putting together a table full of dishes all by herself. During dinner, Joel couldn't hold back and lectured Oliver. She cooks for you, takes care of you every day. Stop taking your blessings for granted. Lay another hand on her and she could report you for domestic abuse. You know that, right? Oliver nodded repeatedly while sipping his drink, but Zoe just chuckled. Oh, let it go. Men have it hard out there, working and dealing with stress. When they lose control, who else can they vent to if not the ones closest to them? I just try to take good care of him and live a decent life. Everything will turn out fine. I was sipping my soup and froze, lifting my head in disbelief. I couldn't believe what I'd just heard. Next to me, Joel let out a faint sigh, so soft it was barely audible. But in that sigh, I heard something like empathy. Oliver was clearly drunk at this point. With a big, sloppy grin, he slurred, Bro, she might not be as capable as your wife, but when it comes to serving someone, your wife can't compete. Especially in bed, she really. Oliver, if you're drunk, go sleep it off. Joel cut him off with a sharp, angry tone. Zoe's face turned crimson. She was so embarrassed she didn't know what to say and, in her flustered state, met Joel's gaze. Trying to change the subject, she quickly said, Joel, I really need to thank you for helping my cousin get into the company. If it weren't for you, you've got the wrong person. Joel interrupted her, even harsher than before, his face tight. I don't know your cousin. You must be mistaken. Zoe blinked, stunned. She clearly didn't understand why his tone had suddenly turned so cold. The room fell into an awkward silence. I gave a small laugh and broke it myself. Zoe, you should be thanking both of us, not just Joel. After all, that special spot your cousin got at the company? Joel only made it available by removing my brother from the list. At that, Zoe's eyes widened. Joel's chopsticks froze in midair. Chapter 9. On the way home, I didn't say a word. As soon as we entered the house, I went straight into the bedroom and began packing. Joel sat alone in the living room for a while before finally walking in with heavy steps. He stood by the door, speaking in a low, measured tone. Miranda, there's been a misunderstanding. Please don't act impulsively. Let me explain. I swear everything I say next is the truth. I didn't respond, nor did I look at him. I kept folding my clothes slowly and methodically. With Oscar, I admit I was selfish. I had just been transferred to the company. All eyes were on me. I had to be cautious. If my brother-in-law joined the company right after I arrived, even if people who know the truth might stay quiet, there are many who don't care about the details. They just fixate on the outcome and make a fuss out of it. So yes, my selfishness was to avoid that possibility entirely, to avoid gossip. As for Zoe's relative, it was really just a coincidence. The spot was still open anyway. I figured it wouldn't hurt to do someone a small favor. Of course, that spot was highly competitive. Why give it to Zoe's cousin? Because I genuinely felt sorry for her. At that, his voice grew heavier. When I went back to their hometown with them, I saw with my own eyes how Oliver's mom verbally abused Zoe. Sometimes she even hit her. It reminded me of my sister. I zipped up the suitcase and got ready to roll it out. Joel grabbed my hand tightly. Miranda, please don't act on impulse, okay? I admit Oscar was wronged. That's why I didn't say a word when you lent him money. I accepted it. We've been together for so many years. And you're pregnant. Are you really going to give me the death sentence over one incident? His voice choked slightly, and his eyes were red at the corners. Aside from the time I got pregnant, I hadn't seen him this emotional in years. I slowly pulled my hand away. My voice calm and steady as always. I'm going for a training. He stared at me, eyes rimmed red, trying to read my expression. Training? You never mentioned anything about a training. I looked down and showed him my phone. There was a notice for a leadership training conference, held at our alma mater in the city. He paused, clearly thrown off, still unsure. But, didn't you say before that after getting pregnant, you didn't want to participate in any trainings? Why the sudden change of heart? People change their minds. I changed mine. I looked at him expressionlessly. I drove myself to the university hotel, checked in, and began the 4-day training program. On the first day, Joel called me 9 times and sent over a dozen WeChat messages reminding me to take care of myself. I ignored all of them. On the second day, he messaged me saying Oscar still needed to renovate the apartment. He had just received a 50,000 yuan quarterly bonus and already transferred the money to Oscar. I didn't reply. On the third day, he said Zoe's distant cousin had failed the internship evaluation and was asked to leave. They were now arranging to bring in someone from the waitlist. On the fourth day, he asked if I needed him to pick me up. I replied, sure. Chapter 10. After Oscar started his job, he came to see me once. The bond between us siblings has always been strong, even at 5 or 6 years old. When I was being bullied by older kids, he'd cry while standing in front of me, shouting, "Sister, you run first." This time, he was worried about me. "Sis, did you fight with my brother-in-law?" I shook my head. "No, you know me, I've never been good at arguing." He frowned. But why did he suddenly change his mind, and even gave me money? I just can't shake the feeling. "Sis, if I've messed things up between you two, I'd rather give up this job." I patted his head. "Silly boy, there's nothing to feel guilty about. What you got was rightfully yours. This is just things going back to how they should have been. As for the money, just consider it compensation. That's perfectly normal." Oscar looked serious. "Don't worry, sis, I'll pay back every cent. I won't let people call you one of those sisters who spoil their brothers." I chuckled. "But what exactly did you do?" "My brother-in-law's not someone who changes his mind easily." I told him gently. "There are many ways to solve a problem. You don't have to tear things apart or get into a screaming match, whether it's a black cat or a white cat, if it catches mice. It's a good cat, right?" A month passed, and nothing really changed between Joel and me. In fact, from beginning to end, we never had a direct confrontation about the whole thing. Any differences were expressed within the normal bounds of daily life, as if the problem had appeared quietly and then quietly disappeared. Joel stopped seeing Oliver as often, and never mentioned Zoe again, cutting them out of our lives. As if with a clean break, he went to work and came home on time, took meticulous care of me during my pregnancy. After the first trimester, my appetite returned in full. He began planning my meals with new focus and care. Life felt happy, even peaceful, except for 2 small things. The first, I found a gold jewelry store receipt in his jacket pocket, 28,888 yuan. I took a photo and went to the store. The clerk showed me the item in the photo, a gold bracelet. "I remember your husband," she said cheerfully. "He said he wanted to surprise his wife. You two must be so happy together." The second thing happened last week. My car had issues and was being repaired at the dealership, so Joel had been driving me around. That day, it was pouring rain. I waited at our usual meeting spot for 40 minutes. His phone kept showing busy the whole time. When he finally arrived, half of me was soaked. Had to take a last-minute call from upper management. He explained, "Why didn't you just get a taxi?" I tried, but couldn't find one in the rain. I sneezed. But yesterday, when I was at a friend's bakery buying desserts, my friend mentioned something. That day it was pouring. "Your husband's car was parked outside my store for almost an hour. I thought no one was inside until the engine suddenly started and he drove off. Turns out he'd been sitting there the whole time on the phone." I froze. What time was that? Around 5 or 6 in the afternoon. I turned and looked out the shop's entrance. The corner where I had been waiting in the storm was just 1 block away. Which means, when I stood in the wind and rain waiting for 40 minutes, he had been sitting in his car, just around the corner, on the phone. What could have been so urgent that he couldn't even drive forward a few meters? That night, I heard him in the study. watching Roman Holiday. He softly murmured a line from the film, "To hold your hand." I shook hands with everyone else. As he said it, his eyes narrowed slightly, and on his face, an unreadable, complicated expression flickered. Chapter 11. I remember the fourth day of the training at my alma mater. That day, I went to the artificial lake and sat there alone for a long time, staring at the shimmering surface of the water. I hesitated, wandered. Halfway through, I got a call from my mother. "Miranda, Mom's legs aren't in great shape. I can't come take care of you while you're pregnant. Make sure to keep a good mood. Eat well whenever you can. Everything is for the baby." Right after she hung up, my mother-in-law called. "Miranda, you need to nourish your body now. Joel's father and I are planning to come take care of you. Let me know what you'd like to eat, and I'll prepare it in advance." As if coordinated, Joel sent me a message asking if I needed him to come pick me up. I scrolled up through the messages, gently touching my belly. Before leaving the lake, I replied, "Okay." Joel has his strengths. He's intelligent, hardworking, and persistent. He pushes steadily toward his goals. More importantly, he has a future. That's crucial. As for his flaws, I used to think they came mainly from his personality, selfishness, impatience, vanity, but that's human nature. I have mine too. As long as we manage and approach things rationally, those flaws shouldn't be enough to derail a life. But now, I think I need to consider something more, because the environment has changed. For the first time, he stands at a height he's never reached before. New heights bring new problems, and new problems require new solutions. Life, we're all crossing the river by feeling for stones. I just never expected that fate would unfold in such a vast and twisted way. So sudden, so overwhelming. Chapter 12. The day before I picked up my car, I attended a meeting at the city's Women's Federation. Since it ended early, I decided to take a cab home. While on the overpass, a truck violently rear-ended the taxi I was in. The car flipped several times, finally slamming into the guardrail before coming to a stop. I lost consciousness as I saw the driver struggling to escape. I don't know how long it was before I faintly woke up again amidst sirens and chaos. Many cars had been involved, but mine was the most severely damaged. I felt a dull ache in my belly. Just as I began to panic, the ambulance arrived. Through the shattered window, I saw the taxi driver talking to paramedics. Pointing in my direction, the medics rushed over. Just as I felt relief, I saw Joel. He stopped the paramedics. His face was stern, and he was shouting something loudly. The words cut through the noise. "Save the child first. I'm asking you. Save the child first." Behind him was Zoe, her face full of panic. In her arms, Lucas was wailing, blood running down his leg. When I woke again, I was already in a hospital bed. The doctor smiled kindly. "Luckily, you were wearing a seatbelt. You've only got a head wound. Now that you're awake, everything should be fine." "What about the baby?" I asked, touching my belly. "No major issues. Just keep an eye on things." After a moment of silence, I asked, "Were all the injured brought to this hospital?" "Yes." After the doctor left, I got out of bed. I checked the rooms one by one, until in the farthest corner, I found them. Lucas was on the bed with a plaster cast on one leg, fast asleep. Zoe sat beside him, wiping her tears, looking pitiful. "Joel, thank God you were there today. I wouldn't have known what to do otherwise." Joel stood by her side, hand half raised to touch her hair, then paused midway. Hesitating, Zoe noticed his hand. Her cheeks flushed slightly. A moment later, she spoke softly. "Joel, you've been so good to me." "I'm willing." Joel's lips were tightly pressed. "Don't say that. We're friends. It's what I should do." Zoe bowed her head, the pale back of her neck exposed. "No one's ever treated me this well, Joel. I'll never forget it. That day, when I asked you, just testing the waters, if you could help my nephew. You said yes without even thinking, and I never imagined you'd put me ahead of your wife. I know it's wrong, but I was so moved. That day it rained so hard. I was scared, and you stayed with me for a whole hour, not even driving. And today, when the accident happened, I didn't know who else to call but you, and you came so quickly. I've always had bad luck. My family only cared about sons. After I married Oliver, he hit me and yelled all the time. This is the first time someone's ever protected me. She took Joel's hand and placed it gently against her cheek. He didn't resist. Joel, I still remember that night 2 months ago when we were heading back from Oliver's hometown. He was snoring in the front seat. You and I were squeezed together in the back. No room at all. I could tell. You were holding back so much. I know. With your wife pregnant. It's been a long time for you. That's why I reached out, with my hand. I remember. Joel suddenly spoke. The mountain night was so dark. But your hand was so white. I'd never seen a hand that white. Zoe blushed harder. I only helped you that once. And I never expected you to be so kind to me afterward. I honestly feel so undeserving. Joel fell silent for a moment. Then said hoarsely, once is more than enough. Chapter 13. When my in-laws called me, I had just returned to the ward from the operating room. After learning that I was injured and in the hospital, they rushed straight over from the train station. Seeing my swollen eyes and pale face, my mother-in-law's voice trembled. The baby isn't. I lay weakly in bed and broke down in sobs. Dad, Mom, the baby's gone. The doctor said if I had arrived 5 minutes earlier, the baby could have been saved. But the first ambulance, it was stopped by someone. They took the ambulance. They stole the time that could have saved my child's life. My father-in-law's eyes turned bloodshot. He roared in fury. Who was it? Who killed my grandson? I'll make them pay with their life. I was so overwhelmed that I fainted from crying. What happened afterward, I heard from the nurses. After figuring out what had happened, my in-laws stormed into Zoe's hospital room. Joel wasn't there at the time. He was outside buying food for Zoe and her son. When he returned, holding a container of dumplings, what he saw was this. His own parents had pinned Zoe to the floor, slapping her face over and over. No one could stop them. Zoe lay limp, her face swollen beyond recognition, screaming in pain. Then Joel's mother looked up, saw her son standing at the door, and let out a heart-wrenching wail. Son, it was that woman's child who stole your wife's ambulance. Your child is gone. Joel's eyes widened. The bowl in his hand slipped from his fingers. The steaming dumplings scattered across the floor. Chapter 14. While I lay unconscious in the hospital bed, my in-laws found out that the man who had stopped the ambulance was their own son. They slapped Joel hard across the face several times, then looked to the ceiling with a long, despairing sigh. This is fate. In their immense grief, they made a decision. I must never find out, because if I knew the truth, I'd never forgive him. So, when I woke up and saw Joel looking lost and broken, crying that he hadn't protected our child, all he could do was kneel beside my bed, tormented and ashamed, tears silently streaming down his face. After a few days in the hospital, I returned home to recover. My in-laws came full of hope and left with heavy hearts. When they said goodbye, their eyes were filled with sorrow and compassion. If our family is destined to have no descendants, then so be it. But we're sorry you had to suffer this, child. In the following month, Joel cared for me in every possible way. Though his work was demanding, he spent every moment outside the office tending to me, even more attentive than during postpartum recovery. Most of the time, I lay in bed eating the postpartum meals he prepared, or reading quotations from Chairman Mao. As Joel grew thinner and more haggard, I gradually regained my strength. My superiors and representatives from the Women's Federation came to visit. Since I was injured in a car accident while attending an official meeting, it was classified as a workplace injury. The head of our department, a female leader, stood beside my bed and gently comforted me. Miranda, don't worry about work. Take your time to rest. Everyone in the office sees your dedication and professionalism. For this year's employee awards, you received the highest number of votes. I looked sincerely moved. Thank you, Director. Thank you to all my colleagues. I promise I won't let anyone down. Just focus on getting better. There will be plenty more opportunities for you to shine in the future. After the group left, I leaned back in bed and closed my eyes. Deep in thought, Joel came in and asked softly, Miranda, what kind of soup would you like today? I opened my eyes and thought for a moment. Pork rib and lotus root. Okay, I'll head to the market now and get the freshest ingredients. Watching his back as he disappeared out the door, I picked up quotations from Chairman Mao from the nightstand and read aloud. We must fully exert our subjective initiative and break through the many obstacles on the road ahead. Turn disadvantage into advantage. Transform unfavorable conditions into favorable ones. Chapter 15. Just as I was nearly fully recovered, Oliver brought Zoe to visit me. I greeted Zoe with warmth and kindness, but she avoided my gaze. As we talked, my eyes drifted to her wrist. Zoe, that gold bracelet is lovely. Must have been expensive? Oliver let out a snort. Expensive? Please, she can't afford real gold. Got that cheap knockoff from a street vendor. Worthless. Zoe looked flustered and quickly chimed in. Yes, just a few bucks. I bought it because it looked shiny. Just for fun. I smiled and pulled out my phone. Recalling something. Look, this is the bracelet Joel secretly bought as a surprise for me. I only found out because I saw the receipt in his jacket. Oliver's eyes lit up. Whoa, this one's real? How much did it cost? It says 28,880 yuan on the receipt. I chuckled. But keep it a secret, you guys are the only ones who know. He hasn't given it to me yet. Then I paused. This design looks a lot like the one Zoe is wearing. Oliver leaned in, squinting. They're exactly the same. Zoe forced a smile. Probably just a copy of the same design. Fakes these days look just like the real thing. I smiled. True, there's no way you'd find real gold at a street stall. Oliver looked at the photo on my phone again, then glanced back at Zoe's wrist. His expression subtly darkening. I casually changed the subject to gossip. Zoe, it's rare to have you here chatting with me. I've been going crazy stuck at home. Hey, remember that couple who lived across from us? They just sold their place and moved out. Zoe asked weakly. Why? I sighed. The husband was caught cheating with someone else's wife. Her husband caught them in the act. To hush things up, he paid a huge sum. Even sold their apartment to settle it. Oliver sat silently on the side, not saying a word for a long time. Chapter 16. After I returned to work, Joel started to seem more and more deflated. The loss of the baby had hit him hard. He put on a brave face in front of me, but often sat alone staring into space, completely drained of energy. Then Oliver suddenly began inviting him out for drinks, frequently. At first, Joel declined every time, worrying I might mind. I told him gently, "It's fine, everyone's had a rough time lately. Go have a drink, talk with a friend, relax a little." He looked at me, deeply moved. "Miranda, medicine is so advanced nowadays. Once your body recovers, we'll definitely have another baby." I nodded. Yes, I will have another child. Maybe he was lying to me, but I wasn't lying to him, because the doctor had told me I'd recovered well, no impact on future pregnancies. My female supervisor kept her word. Once I returned to work, she began giving me more responsibilities. "Miranda, yes, women face more challenges in the workplace, but as long as we work hard and take initiative, we're just as capable as any man." I threw myself into work with renewed focus, determined to seize every opportunity that belonged to me. One evening, as I was getting ready for bed, Joel spoke hesitantly. "Oliver's drunk again, and hitting people. This time, both he and Zoe called me. Miranda, if you need me to stay, I won't go." "Go," I said firmly. "Go now, things could get worse if you don't." That night, I was half asleep when noises outside woke me up. I got up groggily, and was stunned to see Oliver sitting nonchalantly in our living room. "Sis-in-law, don't mind me. I just came with Joel to grab a few things. We'll leave right after." Oliver lounged with his legs crossed, completely at ease. Puzzled, I headed to the study. I ran into Joel coming out. His clothes were disheveled, hair a mess, and there was a visible handprint on his face. "Joel, what happened to you?" He panicked, dropping a bunch of cash on the floor. Nothing. I accidentally knocked over a vendor's stall while driving. Just giving Oliver money to pay for it." "Don't worry." As Oliver left, he glanced at Joel, shaking the money in his hand with a strange look. "Bro, I'll take this much for now. If it's not enough, I'll come back. All right?" Joel's jaw clenched. "Just go." They both insisted it was nothing, so I went back to bed and slept soundly. Until the next morning. Chapter 17. 6 months later, while I was reporting to the leadership team, I suddenly received a call from the police. They only told me to come to the station, but didn't explain the reason. My supervisor asked someone from the union to accompany me. At the station, the officer told me that my husband Joel got into a fight, and someone's ear had been cut off. I was stunned. Who cut whose ear? Joel cut off Oliver's ear. The officer repeated it and explained the full story. It turns out that the night 6 months ago, when Oliver beat Zoe, Joel went to their house to stop the fight. The two of them ended up drinking together. Oliver woke up in the middle of the night to find himself lying in the living room, while ambiguous moans came from the bedroom. He walked in and found Joel moving on top of Zoe, furious beyond belief. He dragged them apart and beat Joel to a pulp. To silence Oliver, Joel had no choice but to agree to pay him. That night I caught them in the hallway, that was why. But Oliver had debts everywhere. One payout wasn't going to make him stop. In the following 6 months, he blackmailed Joel using the video he had secretly recorded, squeezing over 1.8 million yuan from him. I gasped. Impossible. Where did he get 1.8 million? Online loans, the officer said. Joel admitted that he borrowed over $1 million from various platforms. This time, Oliver pushed too far and demanded 500,000 more. In a fit of rage, Joel grabbed a knife from Oliver's kitchen and slashed off his ear. I sat there in shock, unable to respond for a long time. The union rep patted my shoulder sympathetically. Section Chief, please stay strong. Chapter 18. Oliver was sentenced to 10 years in prison for extortion. Joel was expelled from public service for serious misconduct and sentenced to 1 year for intentional assault. We got divorced while he was in prison because I had no knowledge of his debts. I bore no legal responsibility. On the day we signed the divorce papers, I saw him for the first time in months. He was shockingly thin, like a different person. No tears, no drama. He sat there with a blank, dazed expression. When he saw me, he trembled and lowered his head so deeply it looked grotesque. He trembled slightly the entire time. I remained calm and indifferent. As I turned to leave, he suddenly called out to me. I turned back. There was a trace of confusion in his eyes. Tell me, Miranda, why is fate so strange? Not long ago, I was at the top, confident and proud. How did everything change so suddenly? Miranda, tell me, why? I looked at him steadily. Joel, you forgot who you were and where you came from. Everything that happened, you chose each step yourself. Ask yourself, don't you already know the answer? Back at work, my colleagues congratulated me. My request for a temporary reassignment had been approved. 2 months ago, after Joel's scandal caused a stir, I applied to the leadership for a transfer, hoping for a fresh start at a local level post. I walked steadily to thank my superior in person. On the way, my doctor called me on video. Since the surgery, I'd often consulted her for recovery advice, and we gradually became friends. I entered an empty conference room to answer. After a few pleasantries, she said, Miranda, I still remember the day of your surgery. It shocked me. One moment you were worried about the baby's safety. The next you came to me saying you wanted a voluntary abortion. Where did you get that courage? I smiled. I admire my current supervisor a lot. She once told me something I never forgot. Women may seem weak, but once they gain the courage to risk everything, they become unstoppable. Just as I ended the call and turned around, I saw my supervisor standing at the door. I tensed instinctively. She paused for a moment and said, I heard you were looking for me. I was on my way to see you too. I nodded. Yes. The approval just came down. I was coming to thank you in person. She was quiet for a few seconds, then slowly smiled. Miranda, I was worried you wouldn't be able to handle the situation down there. But now, I'm not worried at all. Do a great job these 2 years. When you come back, I'll be waiting for your success. Suppressing the emotion in my chest, I smiled back. Thank you, Director. You can count on me. Extra chapter. When Joel was released from prison, Zoe was waiting at the gate. I've already divorced Oliver, she said, tears in her eyes, her voice soft and pitiful. You've done so much for me. I'm willing to spend my life taking care of you. Joel stared at her for 2 seconds, then suddenly turned and ran. He ran fast, like something terrifying was chasing him. After a few detours, he managed to get Miranda's number. Yes, he wanted to win Miranda back. During his year in prison, he often thought of her, remembering every detail of the life they once shared. In this world, only she truly understood him. Only she had ever supported him. 10 years ago, he had nothing, yet Miranda still chose to enter his life. Now, although he was down and out, he still had skills and experience. He believed he could rebuild his life. He dialed her number. There was noise on the other end, like a company event was going on. Blue team no, 3, out. Red team no, 8, out. Joel calmly called her name. Miranda. It's me, Joel. I'm out now. Miranda's surprised voice answered. Why are you still calling me? Joel took a deep breath and declared, one word at a time. Miranda. I want to pursue you again. There was a brief pause, then a chuckle on the line. Exactly the reaction he expected. Unbothered. He went on. I know you haven't forgiven me yet. And that's fine. I'll take my time. Life is long. I'll rise again. Miranda. During that year in prison, I kept thinking about our child. You suffered. You were hurt. I'll make it up to you. A loudspeaker echoed in the background, now welcoming director Miranda to the stage to announce the final results of the company competition. Miranda's voice came through, clear and firm. Joel. I chose to abort that child. Joel froze. What did you say? Heels clicked elegantly in the background. Miranda seemed to be walking as she spoke. The baby was fine, but after I heard what you and Zoe said at the hospital, I decided to end the pregnancy. When you chose to save someone else's child, you gave up on your own. So don't come looking for me. Don't appear in my life again. Joel, you were out a long time ago. With that, the call ended. Joel sat in a dim, narrow motel room. He didn't move for a long time, as still as a stone statue. In the 2 years that followed, Joel failed at everything he tried to survive. He started delivering food. One day, at a run-down apartment, he ran into Zoe again. She opened the door to take the delivery. Her eyes were swollen, her arms covered in bruises. Inside, a man was yelling at her. A familiar scene, a familiar person. Joel fled, terrified, grateful he was wearing a mask. 2 more years passed. He no longer dreamed of rebuilding anything. Delivering food seemed fine. He had no one, no children. Even if he earned money, who would he leave it to? It was then that he finally realized his life would never amount to more than this. Sometimes, riding his scooter in the wind, he would remember that boy by the lake, studying hard despite poverty and hardship. He had dreams. He had a future. He had a beautiful girl by his side. That might have been him, or maybe it never really was.